So, my name is Miriam Mansour. I'm a professor of English language and literature at Faculty of Letters from the Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk to you a little bit, Rob. And I'd like to thank all of you from University of Southampton for this opportunity to be here as a tutor review. And it's been an amazing experience to work with all the conversation we have been established in this EMI course. And I thank you so very much. I think all the participants, it's just a very special experience for me, this way of having the chance of including my voice in this big conversation in this course. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Miriam. And yeah, I think a big purpose as to why or what we wanted to achieve with the MOOC was having more people involved and lots of voices, because obviously, we don't want to control the narrative for the whole world. And it's great. This is the first weekly video where we've had a partner come in. So very happy with that. And yeah, as you say, great to have new voices coming in and sharing your experience and ideas. So I sent you some questions yesterday, just before this session. Not much preparation time, sorry about that. But first question was just, what has impressed you both this week and over the course so far in the discussions that have been happening on the MOOC?
Well, what has impressed me the most is that since the first week, I noticed the commitment of the participants, especially when they are requested to respond to questions on how to act or behave in the scenario studios. They were very much involved. The engagement was just something fantastic. I could feel that they were really working and reading all the activities very well, and at the same time participating very well. So this was really something that impressed me a lot.
Yes, it's something that really makes it worthwhile for me, as you see how enthusiastic people are when they engage with this. And I think it's great to be outside people's jobs, and like people seem to come to the MOOC and they share because they want to. It's not because they're forced to. And I think it's, yeah, we have wonderful responses. So I certainly agree. And what important points have come up this week for you? Or so far, not necessarily this week, but.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'm going to mention all 3 weeks, okay? So the points that I found that people engaged even more with their responses and comments, they were very much a way of answering or responding to your comments and suggestions, and also to Mary's comments and suggestions. I think everybody got very much enthusiastic, as you mentioned, and I thank all of you again, the participants, for it, having this necessity to understand that the use of English as a medium of instruction goes beyond than the teaching of the language. So it involves a multilingual and intercultural experience. So I think the responses and the comments on these discussions have been wise and very much sensitive. Most of the conversations revolved around the need to understand the context in which English is there to facilitate communication and not to complicate it. And I'd like to share my experience with all the participants, because some of their fears, some of their concerns were pretty much my same fears and my very same concerns. So it's good to hear from the other that what affects me affects the other, and together we may reach a possibility of doing better what we try to do the most, especially using English as a medium for it, or this a language that facilitates our conversation. For example, some of the parts you suggested, Rob, we have this idea of using signpost language, how you may use the pauses and the ways we may signal with our voice to guide our lecture. So the participants responded in a very positive way to these suggestions, okay? There is also the important contribution in the videos produced by Professor Christine Houtgren, who emphasized even more the need to focus on the subject content of a class rather than on the use of the perfect kind of language. And I could not forget to cite Mary's enlightening sentence that, I quote, "The best is simple." I think these points, they not only motivated the debate, but they also encouraged us, because we are not native speakers of English. So this motivation helped us very much to enhance our confidence by realizing that, yes, we can communicate in an intelligible and clear way, not carrying the burden to speak like native speakers. So, for example, in this past week 3, the subjects presented reinforced the need to acquire confidence in the use of English. So the suggestions presented: common and simple language can be very effective, especially when you use understandable structures. And I think that the lectures with the professors delivering their presentation in different manners were very helpful also, especially when Mary suggested our attention to the use of body language. So I think all the participants engaged in a very positive and enthusiastic way, and of course we'll be more prepared for our lectures using all the indications you presented, for example, with the use of functional language, and of course better practices in lecturing.
Fantastic, yeah. Some very good points there. And speaking of great quotations, I'm taking that one. The English is there to facilitate communication, not complicate it. I like that. So I will use it again in future, and I'll cite you, I promise.
Okay.
But no, yeah, really good points there. And I, of course, agree with everything you said. And it's great. Yeah, I think you're putting things forward in a really positive way. And yeah, I completely agree with you. The next question related to your context, because it would be a shame to invite you here to join this conversation and not to ask you about EMI in your context. So what are the features of EMI, and you know, what's your personal experience in the field?
Well, I'd like to mention the features of EMI in Brazil as a way of showing or demonstrating that the very same experience we may have been having here is somehow shared worldwide. But I'd like to make some comments here from the participants, and I'm not going to cite their names, but only the most important ideas they presented. For example, we had a Brazilian person saying that before this week, I would not even consider teaching a course in English because I always thought my English is too basic for this. Now, after this week's suggestions, the pressure on perfect pronunciation and writing decreased. And that does symbolize some light on the horizon. And I think this was very effective. This type of comment demonstrates that there is a promising possibility that this course prepares students, teachers, professors for the internationalization of teaching and research. And I think that this is the necessity to see the internationalization of higher education with a different perspective. And I think this is one of the most relevant contributions of MOOC for us here in Brazil, more specifically at UFMG. Our institution has been trying hard to make sure that this internationalization process keeps on developing itself, of course, to prepare our students, our professionals for this international environment, not only in the academic world, but everywhere, because it is important for us, this experience. I remember another comment, people feeling more prepared to help their students to organize themselves or to plan themselves for future international conferences. So I think EMI is being very important in this sense, opening and motivating us to see with this international perspective. And I think this is a very relevant contribution, especially at UFMG, not only for me as a professional as a professor at UFMG, trying to be myself more prepared for this international world and helping my students and my community to be prepared as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad you got both sides of that. There's the, as you say, the large scale internationalization, ambition and inclusion. And then you kind of captured the feelings of the people who are at the starting point of that, you know, who are possibly anxious about what that might mean for them. And yeah, I can understand the nervousness. I tried to deliver a lecture once in Mandarin, which is my second best language, and it was probably the most horrible experience in the preparation to that. Was the most horrible experience I've had. Just, you know, everything I know in one context, I'm not sure about how well I'm communicating it in another. And yeah, so I can appreciate that feeling, but the confidence that comes from that I can do that. And actually, you know, there's a virtue in that, you know, knowing what's simple, knowing what your audience will and won't understand is an advantage compared to you know, somebody raised in Britain who's only ever taught in Britain, who might not know which words are difficult or pronunciation, or where pronunciation will cause a problem, something like that. So yeah, thank you very much. And I had one final question for you, which was asking for your advice for people working in this area. So whether in UFMG or a particular linguistic concept or contexts, or particular types of learners. So what advice would you pass on to others?
Okay. If I could do with some advice for the ones who are already professors, teachers, students that use English as a medium of instruction, and to the ones who are planning to be, it is to focus on the importance of education, on the social aspect of the teaching/learning process, that it goes far beyond the mastering of a language, because it involves the notions of interaction, intelligibility, diversity observance, and particularly that our communicative process depends more on our confidence with dealing with the subject content, and of course with our relationship with our audience. And I think this past weeks, we had this very much worked on this idea of understanding our relationship with our audience. And of course, being very much worried about the subject content that we need to present. And English, again, needs to be this tool to help us out, and not a barrier, as was very, very well presented during the course. So basically, this is, I think, it's the most, let's say, interesting advice that I may bring to you all. And once again, I'd like to thank all the participants for opening this debate, including their voices in this great conversation, because that's exactly the point. Not only to share our experiences, but to understand what the best way is for us to keep on moving in this, let's say, moments of using English, which is a tool for all of us, available to all of us. So basically, that's it. Thank you so very much also, Rob.
Thank you very much. I think you have represented perfectly as our first ever guest to come and do a weekly video. I think they were perfect responses, and again, emphasizing the reason why all these voices are important, you know, coming into the discussion, sharing ideas, sharing experience, sharing wise words for others. And that's, for me, the nature of this field, and how people can move forward, collaborating with others and engaging with others. Because yeah, it's fantastic. You know, the more voices, the better. And I think you've contributed a great deal in those words. And I think, yes, much better than our normal weekly videos. I feel we have to raise the standard now. But but thank you very much for joining me, and yeah, for engaging in this discussion, and for all you're doing, because I think you're doing really interesting work, both with us and where you are. So yeah, please do continue doing that, and I look forward to seeing you next week, I hope. So yeah, or on the MOOC, certainly. Okay, thank you very much, and I will stop the recording now. There we go.